Discussion of cardiology multiple choice questions. Low voltage potentials during electrophysiological study could be due to A. Myocardial infarction, B. Myocardial fibrosis, C. Poor electrode contact, D. All of the above. Correct answer D. All of the above. Low voltage potentials are those with an amplitude less than 0.5 millivolt in the atrium and less than 1.5 millivolt in the ventricle. Low voltage potentials could be due to myocardial infarction, fibrosis, or poor contact of the electrode, as well as due to far field effect. Mustard procedure is A. Atrial based repair of DTGA using an intra-atrial baffle, B. Repair for tricuspid atresia, C. Arterial switch operation for DTGA, D. Double switch operation for corrected TGA. Correct answer A. Atrial based repair of DTGA using an intra-atrial baffle. Atrial based repair of DTGA using an intra-atrial baffle done for those who have missed the time window for arterial switch operation. Repair for tricuspid atresia is Fontan surgery. Arterial switch operation for DTGA is known as Jettine's arterial switch operation. Surgery for treatment of aortic atresia is credited to A. Jettine, B. Norwood, C. Fontan, D. Brock. Correct answer B. Norwood. Jettine arterial switch, Norwood aortic atresia or hypoplastic left heart syndrome, Fontan for tricuspid atresia, Brock surgical pulmonary valvotomy. Decompensated erythrocytosis can occur in cyanotic congenital heart disease after A. Oral ion treatment, B. Venesection, C. Surgical correction, D. None of the above. Correct answer B. Venesection. If venesection produces relative iron deficiency anemia, the microcytes are less deformable and produce renal ischemia. This triggers secretion of erythropoietin, which produces erythrocytosis, which again causes renal ischemia and a vicious cycle. So, venesection is to be used cautiously in hyperviscosity of cyanotic congenital heart disease, as it can be potentially harmful. Murmur of rupture of sinus of Valsalva into right ventricle is A. Systolic, B. Diastolic, C. Continuous with diastolic augmentation, D. Continuous with systolic augmentation. Correct answer C. Continuous with diastolic augmentation. Rupture into right-sided chambers causes superficial continuous murmur. Diastolic augmentation of the continuous murmur is characteristic of rupture into the right ventricle. This is because the tract gets compressed in systole and the flow is better in diastole. In arterial switch operation for DTGA, coronary arteries are A. Left in situ, B. Transferred along with a button of aortic tissue, C. Grafted with a saphenous vein graft, D. Grafted with right and left internal mammary arteries. Correct answer B. Transferred along with a button of aortic tissue. Arterial switch operation of Jettine is done under cardiopulmonary bypass and involves the restoration of ventricular-arterial concordance. Aorta and pulmonary arteries are transected and transferred to the corresponding ventricles by the Lecomte maneuver. Coronaries are transferred along with a button of tissue into the neo-aorta. De Vega annuloplasty was designed for repair of A. Functional tricuspid regurgitation, B. Functional mitral regurgitation, C. Functional aortic regurgitation, D. Functional pulmonary regurgitation. Correct answer A. Functional tricuspid regurgitation. De Vega annuloplasty can be done as an isolated procedure or during surgery for mitral, aortic, or combined mitral and aortic valve surgery. Which of the following direct oral anticoagulant is a prodrug? A. Dabigatran, B. Apixaban, C. Rivaroxaban, D. Edoxaban. Correct answer Dabigatran. Only Dabigatran etoxylate is a prodrug among the DOACs. It is transformed to active form by esterases which are ubiquitous. Most common myocardial disorder in obesity. A. Heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. B. Heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. C. High output heart failure. D. None of the above. Correct answer B. Heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. Most common myocardial disorder in obesity is heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. This is mostly due to reduced distensibility of the left ventricle, causing left ventricular diastolic dysfunction and heart failure with preserved ejection fraction. On the other way around, obesity is common in those with HFpEF. In obesity, due to reduced distensibility of the left ventricle, even slight increase in filling leads to disproportionate increase in filling pressures. This is thought to be due to lower microvasculature and increase in fibrosis directly driven by adiposity. Amount of myocardial fibrosis is directly related to diastolic filling, functional capacity and outcomes. High output heart failure occurs only in the morbidly obese with volume overload. They have markedly enlarged ventricles and elevated natriuretic peptides with glomerular hyperfiltration. Still, obesity contributed to 31% of cases in this data of 15-year experience on high output heart failure from Mayo Clinic Catheterization Laboratory. References on heart failure in obesity. Most common site of cardiac metastasis. A. Pericardium, B. Myocardium, C. Endocardium, D. Heart valves. Correct answer A. Pericardium. More than 60% of the metastatic involvement of the heart is in the pericardium. This can cause pericarditis or effusion. In fact, the commonest cause of cardiac tamponade is malignant pericardial effusion, which is most often due to metastasis. Myocardial metastasis may occur in 1/3 of cases. These can present with cardiac arrhythmia or chest pain, which can sometimes mimic acute coronary syndrome. If there is extensive myocardial involvement, ventricular force of contraction may be affected, leading to heart failure. Rarely, even myocardial rupture can occur. Endocardial involvement is the least common and seen in 3 to 5% of cases. It can cause tumor emboli or obstruction of valves. Radiofrequency catheter ablation of electrical storm resulting from metastatic cardiac tumor has also been described. There were episodes of sustained VT and VF. Multiple ablations were required to make the arrhythmia non-inducible in that case. Reference on cardiac metastasis. Malignancy least likely to metastasize to heart. A. Breast. B. Lung. C. Melanoma. D. Prostate. Correct answer D. Prostate. Malignancy invading the heart. More aggressive ones like those from the breast, lung, hematological malignancies, and melanoma are more likely to metastasize to the heart. Slow-growing tumors like carcinoma of prostate is very unlikely to metastasize to the heart. Primary tumors of the heart are much less common than secondaries. Different ways of spreading of metastasis to heart. Direct extension carcinoma lung, hematogenous spread melanoma lymphoma generally leads to myocardial or endocardial metastasis. Retrograde lymphatic spread carcinoma breast. Lymphatic spread leads to pericardial and epicardial involvement. Extension through the veins renal cell carcinoma grows through renal vein into inferior vena cava and right atrium, often mistaken for right atrial myxoma on echocardiography. Most common metastases are from lung cancer, 36 to 39%, with those from breast cancer being 10 to 12%, and those from hematological malignancies 10 to 21%. 1 millimole reduction of LDL cholesterol can lower atherosclerotic cardiovascular events by dash in a few years. A. 20%, B. 30%, C. 40%, D. 50%. Correct answer A. 20%. This has been derived from over 25 cardiovascular outcome trials with statins. Cholesterol Treatment Trialists Collaboration conducts periodic meta-analysis of trials with 1,000 or more participants and follow-up of 2 years or more. They used individual participant data and the trials were mostly on statins. Data on 170,000 participants in 26 randomized trials was published in The Lancet. Across 26 trials, 10% reduction in all-cause mortality was noted per 1 millimole per liter reduction in LDL cholesterol. Major cardiovascular events were reduced by a fifth for 1 millimole per liter lowering of LDL cholesterol. It was further suggested that 2 to 3 millimoles per liter reduction in LDL could bring about a reduction of events by 40 to 50%. References on LDL and atherosclerotic events. Genetic basis of Brugada syndrome has been identified in dash percentage of cases currently. A. 30%, B. 50%, C. 70%, D. 90%. Correct answer A. 30%. Though autosomal dominant pattern of inheritance has been noted in Brugada syndrome, pathogenic mutations have not been detected in 70% of the cases. The first mutation to be identified in the syndrome was in the sodium channel gene SCN5A in 1998. Even now, most of the mutations detected in the syndrome are in the same gene. Several other potential genes have been identified, but all of them together contribute to only 2 to 5% of the diagnosed cases. References on genetic basis of Brugada syndrome. Which of the following is not a known advantage of direct oral anticoagulant over warfarin? A. Reduction in stroke. B. Lesser intracranial bleeds. C. Lower gastrointestinal bleeding. D. Lower mortality. Correct answer C. Lower gastrointestinal bleeding. Benefit of DOAC over warfarin in the treatment of non-valvular atrial fibrillation and venous thromboembolism are now well established. but for the higher rates of gastrointestinal bleeding noted in some cases. A meta-analysis of about 72,000 participants in 4 landmark trials of dogs, which included RELY, Rocket AF, Aristotle, Engage AF TIMI 48 trials, demonstrated increased gastrointestinal bleeding with DWAC. Otherwise, DWACs had a favorable risk-benefit profile with lower intracranial hemorrhage and mortality compared to warfarin. Stroke or systemic embolism rates were 19% lower in those with non-valvular atrial fibrillation treated with DWACs compared to warfarin. This reduction was mainly driven by reduction in hemorrhagic stroke. Major bleeding rates were similar to warfarin in this meta-analysis, though gastrointestinal bleeding was higher. There is variation in the rates of gastrointestinal bleeding in DWACs used for treatment of non-valvular atrial fibrillation. Dabigatran has probably a higher rate of gastrointestinal bleed compared to other DWACs. When low-dose DWAC regimens were used, overall similar reductions in stroke and systemic embolism rates compared to warfarin were noted. These regimens had a favorable bleeding profile but significantly more ischemic strokes. Which of the following is not an indication for DOAC like dabigatran? A. Prophylaxis against stroke in AF. B. Prophylaxis against systemic embolism in non-valvular atrial fibrillation. C. Treatment and prevention of recurrent venous thromboembolism. D. Mechanical prosthetic mitral valve. Correct answer D. Mechanical prosthetic mitral valve. Mechanical prosthetic valve is a highly thrombogenic situation and DOAC is not enough to prevent it. As vitamin K antagonists act on multiple levels in the coagulation cascade, they are powerful enough to prevent thrombosis on mechanical prosthetic valves. Realign trial comparing warfarin and dabigatran in mechanical heart valve replacement was terminated prematurely due to excess thromboembolic and bleeding events in those on dabigatran. Though vitamin K antagonists like warfarin provide excellent protection against thromboembolic complications in patients with mechanical prosthetic valves, they need regular coagulation monitoring. They have multiple food and drug interactions which can change the INR and lead to INR out of therapeutic range and hence the time in therapeutic range. Mitral isthmus, often targeted during ablation of atrial fibrillation, is between the mitral valve and A. Left inferior pulmonary vein, B. Left superior pulmonary vein, C. Right inferior pulmonary vein, D. Right superior pulmonary vein. Correct answer A. Left inferior pulmonary vein. It is a narrow isthmus of myocardium between the lateral mitral annulus and the left inferior pulmonary vein. It was first described by Luria and colleagues in 2001 during left accessory pathway ablation. It was considered to be analogous to the cavo-tricuspid isthmus in the right atrium, which is targeted for atrial flutter ablation. Feasibility and safety of ablation of the mitral isthmus for atrial fibrillation was first reported in 2004 by Jace and colleagues. Prior to that, ablations were done in isolated case reports of atypical perimitral flutter. Mitral isthmus is bounded by the lateral mitral annulus and left inferior pulmonary vein ostium. As it is adjacent to left atrial appendage and coronary sinus, assessment of bidirectional block after ablation is feasible. As extensive ablation is often needed, including the coronary sinus to achieve isthmus block and close relation to vital structures like left circumflex artery and esophagus, various complications have been reported. These include cardiac tamponade, damage to left circumflex artery, and atrioesophageal fistula. References on mitral isthmus. Crystal AF trial used implantable cardiac monitor to detect AF. Percentage of AF detected at 3 years: A 3%, B 10%, C 20%, D 30%. Correct answer D 30%. Crystal AF trial randomized 441 patients with cryptogenic stroke with no evidence of AF on 24-hour monitoring. At 6 months, AF was noted in 8.9% of the study group versus 1.4% in the control group, which became 12.4% and 2% at 12 months using an implantable cardiac monitor. At 3 years, the detection rate was 30% with implantable cardiac monitor, while it was only 3% in the control group. This study highlights the fact that a 24-hour Holter monitoring grossly underestimates the occurrence of AF in those with cryptogenic stroke. Guidelines recommend a minimum of 72-hour ECG monitoring in patients with transient ischemic attack or ischemic stroke to screen for AF. References on Crystal AF study and European Society of Cardiology guidelines for the management of atrial fibrillation. Potential cardiac maladaptations to high volume vigorous exercise. A. Exercise-induced cardiac biomarker release. B. Myocardial fibrosis. C. Atrial fibrillation. D. All of the above. Correct answer D. All of the above. Although moderate intensity exercise has long-term beneficial cardiovascular effects, high volume vigorous exercise may have some potential adverse effects as recognized by recent studies. Moreover, vigorous physical activity by unfit individuals may precipitate sudden cardiac death and acute myocardial infarction in susceptible individuals. But this should not discourage regular tailored exercise programs which have a long-term beneficial effect. Prolonged exercise increases cardiac biomarkers and post-exercise transient myocardial dysfunction. Endurance athletes above the age of 35 years have increased myocardial late gadolinium enhancement indicating myocardial fibrosis. They also have elevated coronary artery calcium scores and higher incidence of atrial fibrillation. High intensity, high volume exercise may thus be deleterious in some individuals. This goes with the usual saying that even something which is a panacea could be harmful if too much. Vigorous exercise is defined as intensity of exercise at 60% or more of functional capacity and moderate intensity as 40 to 59% of functional capacity. Reference on potential downside of high volume vigorous exercise. A scientific statement from the American Heart Association. Commonest cause of death in those with atrial fibrillation. A. Heart failure. B. Myocardial infarction. C. Stroke. D. None of the above. Correct answer A. Heart failure. In a registry involving 15,400 patients from 47 countries presenting with atrial fibrillation, heart failure was the most common cause of death, accounting for 30% of deaths by 1 year. Stroke was next, accounting for 8% of the deaths. Death rate was higher in whom AF was the secondary diagnosis rather than the primary diagnosis at presentation. 1 year occurrence of stroke was 4% in the total cohort. Occurrence of stroke was also higher in those with AF as secondary diagnosis compared to those with AF as primary diagnosis. Reference on causes of mortality in atrial fibrillation. Persistent AF is AF which persists more than A 3 days, B 5 days, C 7 days, D 14 days. Correct answer C 7 days. Paroxysmal AF is recurrent AF which terminates spontaneously within 7 days. If it persists more than 7 days, it is called persistent atrial fibrillation. If AF persists more than 12 months, it is called long-standing persistent AF. Reference on atrial fibrillation. Optical coherence tomography compared to intravascular ultrasound has A. OCT has higher resolution but lower depth penetration. B. OCT has lower resolution but higher depth penetration. C. OCT has higher resolution and depth penetration. D. OCT has lower resolution and depth penetration. Correct answer A. OCT has higher resolution but lower depth penetration. Optical coherence tomography has much higher resolution compared to intravascular ultrasound. OCT has the resolution in range of 10 to 20 microns, which is an order of magnitude better than that of IVUS. But the limitation is the lower depth of tissue penetration, which is only 2 to 3 millimeters compared to the 10 millimeter tissue penetration of current intravascular ultrasound probes. This may change as technology advances. Balloon atrial septostomy is done for A. DTGA with deep cyanosis, B. PDA with heart failure, C. TOF with spells, D. Reverse Luttenbacher syndrome with cyanosis. Correct answer A. DTGA with deep cyanosis. Balloon atrial septostomy is the classical bailout procedure for the deeply cyanosed and acidotic newborn with detransposition of great arteries and poor admixture. As the systemic and pulmonary circulations are parallel in DTGA, it is urgent to provide good mixing at the atrial level, which is the most preferred site at the earliest. This is where the balloon atrial septostomy comes in as a life-saving option which buys time for corrective surgery. Balloon atrial septostomy was initially described in 1966 by Rashkin and Miller. In the immediate neonatal period, the approach is often through the umbilical vein, though femoral vein is an option later on. Balloon septostomy catheter is introduced into the left atrium under fluoroscopy or sometimes under echocardiographic guidance. Echocardiography is more often used to guide the proper position of the intraatrial septum rather than as total guidance in the absence of fluoroscopy. The balloon at the tip of the catheter is inflated and abruptly pulled back into the right atrium, tearing the intraatrial septum. A good defect will improve the mixing and consequently the systemic oxygen saturation as more deoxygenated blood reaches the lung for oxygenation, unlike the pure DTGA in which hardly any portion of the systemic venous drainage is carried to the lungs for oxygenation. Adequacy of the septal tear is indicated by only minimal gradient across the intraatrial septum after the procedure. Beyond the neonatal period, septum becomes thick and difficult to tear by simple balloon atrial septostomy when a blade atrial septostomy may be needed. This procedure utilizes a catheter-mounted blade to make an incision in the intraatrial septum. Pickering syndrome is A. Pulmonary edema due to hemodynamic voice in TAPVC. B. Pulmonary edema due to renal artery stenosis. C. Pulmonary edema due to mitral stenosis. D. Pulmonary edema due to acute myocarditis. Correct answer B. Pulmonary edema due to renal artery stenosis. Flash pulmonary edema occurs rapidly and resolves rapidly. The original description was by Pickering and Associates in 1988. Hence, the entity has been termed Pickering syndrome by Messerly and colleagues. It is seen with either bilateral renal artery stenosis or in case of single functional kidney with ipsilateral renal artery stenosis. Binary restenosis after percutaneous intervention is A. 50% or more of luminal narrowing at repeat angiogram. B. Restenosis at both ends of the stent, candy-wrapper angiographic appearance. C. Two tandem stenosis of restenosis within the stent. D. Restenosis occurring after a repeat PCI. Correct answer A. 50% or more of luminal narrowing at repeat angiogram. Here are some other terms used in the setting of PCI. Candy-wrapper angiographic appearance, though typical of intracoronary brachytherapy with radiation, has also been described with drug-eluting stents. In this, both ends of the stented segment are narrow and can be due to geographic miss as well. Late loss of lumen. Minimal luminal diameter at the end of the procedure minus the minimal luminal diameter at the repeat angiogram, generally at 6 months. In-stent restenosis. In-stent restenosis is often asymptomatic and has to be looked for by exercise ECG. 1/3 of cases of in-stent restenosis can present with acute coronary syndrome and is quoted as an indication for routine coronary angiography at 3 to 6 months after unprotected left main stenting. Geographical miss. Geographical miss is failure to cover whole of the disease segment during stenting.